We dive into another mailbag here with a special guest next here on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And we returned here with another episode of Locked On Ravens. I'm your host, Kevin Allstriker of Ravens Wire, and we returned here with a midweek edition of the show, talking with the one and only Cole Jackson. Cole, it was a tough game. Well, first of all, it was a wild game, a crazy game. Every type of thing happened. The Ravens, though, just could not put the pieces together, losing 33-27 in overtime against the Las Vegas Raiders. They fall to 0-1. How you doing today, Cole?
Nothing can hurt me more than the Ravens hurt me last night. So, like you and I were just talking about off stream, when you get a little bit older, I got to worry about a little 3-year-old running around, and I have less time to be depressed about the Ravens. But it was just heart wrenching. I mean, it looked like a game where they were going to take control, and even when it, got to 14-10, I thought they could seize control again, and then of course you get the interception, and it's kind of the miracle. You get the false start on Leatherwood. They're backed up. You get the ball back, and I mean, everything just kind of came crashing down. It just looked like one of those games where the football gods did not want them to win the game.
Yeah, and honestly, for some of the game, it didn't seem like either team wanted to win the game, giving the ball back to each other, missing opportunities. But Cole, there were a lot of takeaways in this one for sure. I know a lot of people are in panic mode right now. I'm trying to quell that a little bit and say, hey, the season's not over. But I know people are looking ahead and seeing that Kansas City Chiefs team. But I do want to start off with, I think, the biggest storyline here for our mailbag. We have a plethora of mailbag questions. Thank you to everybody who did submit those. We got an outpouring of questions. And we're going to start off here with Ben, who asked, do you think the offensive line is something that will just take a couple weeks to gel, or is there a deeper problem? And Cole, the offensive line, definitely a big storyline, was not good. There were some players who played better than others, definitely. I thought Bradley Bozeman played well. I thought Alejandro Villanueva did not, to put it nicely. So Cole, what's your mindset right now with this offensive line? Is there any deeper meaning behind their performance, or do you think that everything will get a bit better as the season progresses?
Well, they have some interesting storylines, right? Like, you have Stanley working back from that injury, and I mean, his lack of speed was obvious. That's something that, in my opinion, is going to come with time. He's going to get his feet back under him, should improve. So that's one of those things. Like, so if the question is, can we expect the line to gel? We see a better performance from Ronnie Stanley, in my opinion, yes. When we look at the interior, I thought Zeitler had a rough start to the game, and he really settled in. I thought Bozeman played really well. And the unfortunate thing is Tyree Phillips was having a pretty good game until the injury. So I thought the interior was actually doing quite okay. Ben Powers came in, did pretty well in the run game, really struggled in pass pro again, which, I mean, if you go back and look at the O-line breakdowns from preseason on Two Guys Watching Football, it was clear as day. He just struggles in pass protection. So ironic from what he did in college. He was a fantastic pass protector. So, I now have a concern with the left guard. I have a concern with the left guard being beside a left tackle who's trying to get his way back. And then there's Villanueva, and I know we're going to go into him specifically. So if, I won't go too much into him so that we can address that in the next, I think we have about 84 questions on Villanueva. So, but the general question is, can this offensive line gel? Can they get better? Absolutely they can. It's a new group of guys playing together. I think the biggest thing that stood out to me when you compare the two teams is watch the way the Raiders offensive line and their running backs and tight ends that were kept in on, 6-7 man protections, or just 5-man protections against the blitz. Their communication was flawless. They had good handoffs. They had a great ability of adjusting to pick up extra rushers against the Ravens, who were sending the heat. So I think that is it's an interesting contrast. I thought that Raiders O-line was going to struggle. They just looked like they were better prepared. So I could see that coming a long way, but some of the individual performances, I mean, it's always easy to say it can't get any worse, but we got to be realistic. So, guys just simply need to execute better. But I do think there are some little things like the communication, picking up blitzes, that sort of thing, where you can see a little bit. They'll take some steps in gelling, in my opinion.
Yeah, I do too. And I think, Cole, we talked about it last week. I think we both expected some kinds of struggle with the offensive line. But looking at it, I mean, the Ravens in general, I don't think people were expecting what we saw on Monday night in terms of the actual struggles of Villanueva and a couple of others as well. So, but looking at it that way, I think that, yes, it was not a good performance by the offensive line, but there is room for improvement. And that does lead me into the next question here. And we'll get into a bit more of some offensive line talk and getting into a question from Michael Godfrey, who asks, do you see the Ravens working out any offensive tackles, mainly Mitchell Schwartz, for short-term help? With Juwan James on the injured reserve set to return next year, I don't see them trading or making a long-term deal with a free agent, but I could be wrong. And so, yeah, for James, the Ravens haven't really been very clear about, is he coming back this year? Is he coming back next year? It seems like it will be a next year thing. But Cole, in your opinion, do you think this is a situation where Villanueva, it's only 1 week, but struggled so badly that the Ravens need to consider outside help? Because they're not going to cut Villanueva. The dead money this year, I think, is about like $8 million. So there's no sense to cut him. But could they bring in a veteran to maybe say, hey, look, Alejandro Villanueva, if you're not performing well week 3, week 4, instead of putting Patrick McCarry there or maybe calling up Adrian Ely, we're going to sign a veteran to take your place?
I think they're absolutely going to sign a veteran, and that's mostly because Tyree Phillips went down. Say yesterday one of the offensive tackles got hurt. I don't think Phillips would have kicked if he was still in the game. I don't think Phillips would have kicked out to tackle, and then they brought in Powers. I think they would have put in McCarry, but then assume Phillips never got hurt. I think he would have taken over one of the offensive tackle spots. So even though he was starting at guard, I think he was technically the swing OT when it wasn't an in-game adjustment. I've talked about that a little bit in the past. We have in-game adjustments because they don't want to move a guy who's in a starting spot, but then in between weeks, they will make those types of adjustments. We saw it last year when Stanley went down in the Cleveland game and missed some snaps. They put Fluker right into left tackle. They didn't move Orlando Brown over and then insert Fluker at right tackle. Right. That's kind of what I'm referring to. So I do think they're going to look for an offensive tackle to come in and provide that depth, because I think Phillips was technically that third guy, even though McCarry would have been the game day offensive tackle depth. So, I hope that makes sense, because I know it's a little confusing, but I do think they're going to bring someone in. Right now, it's McCarry, it's Cologne, and then it's 2 guys that are guards. And so I don't see that really being feasible. So, is it Schwartz? Is Schwartz even looking to play? He's basically been doing Twitter analysis and doing a damn good job at it. So kudos to him for that. But then, there's a couple guys. There's Ricky Wagner out there that the Ravens are familiar with. Maybe they go out and get another tweener that isn't really an offensive tackle like Schofield, who was here and played offensive tackle in preseason. Absolutely not my choice. He's not an offensive tackle. He's a guard. He looked like a guard playing tackle when he was here in the preseason. That's all he's done in the past. So when the teams try to kick him out to tackle, he has to move back into guard. So Schofield would not be my move. He just doesn't look like the answer there. I could definitely see it being a Wagner or a Schwartz if Schwartz is looking to play. I don't know where his health's at. I don't even know if he wants to get back into it. But a guy like Wagner could make a ton of sense to kind of bring in here. And so the question is, are they going to move on from Villanueva right away? No, they're going to give him a few weeks. And, we're going to get into him specifically, but they're going to give him a few weeks to kind of get it right and see if he can make the adjustment.
Yeah, I agree. I think a veteran is almost a must at this point, especially with Phillips going down. That's a key part here. The positional versatility. The swing tackle now is Patrick McCarry, and whether the Ravens feel comfortable or not, that's their own thing. But I'd feel a lot more comfortable personally if there was an option behind a swing tackle, or if McCarry could be the backup swing tackle, much like he was when Phillips was still healthy. But Cole, getting into another question here from Tim Duncan's burner. So, I guess thank you, Tim Duncan. How do we fix this offensive line, Alejandro Villanueva in particular? And look, this is a good question. I know Alejandro Villanueva is a key guy that a lot of people are talking about right now. But Cole, there were a couple people on this offensive line, Bozeman, and you mentioned Powers doing some good things in the run game that did play well, and obviously Stanley coming back, and Kevin Zeitler, who, again, I agree, struggled to start, finished, I think, pretty well. But how would you go about fixing this offensive line so that, week 2, week 3, later in the year, the Ravens aren't having these same problems? And how do you coach up these offensive linemen right now?
Well, I can talk specifically to what I'm seeing from Villanueva, and I am planning to do a video because there are plays, believe it or not, where Villanueva did have his pass set down, and the problem was it wasn't consistent, and when it wasn't consistent, that's when he was losing one-on-ones. He was charted with 10 pressures allowed. That's absurd, not good. But the nice thing about doing video analysis is we can take the bad and look at the why. Because, the what doesn't really matter anymore. Like, let's figure out why he's having these issues. And then we can also show him doing it properly. And that will show specifically where the issues are. So spoiler alert, the issues are his set point. So you can see it clear as day. The Raiders were lining up wide on him, like in a wide 9 stance. Crosby was trying to get that runway. And you see it almost every single time he loses a rep. He's setting too shallow on the inside shoulder of the defensive end. It was mostly Crosby that he saw. I think he saw Nassib a few times though. That was the problem. So it's actually been a conversation that happened with some of I think it was Olin Kreutz and Duke Mayweather and some of those big O-line Twitter accounts. They were talking about Penei Sewell because Sewell was playing right tackle. He moved from left tackle at Oregon. And they were looking at his preseason games to show where he was struggling. Where was he struggling the most, moving from the left side to the right side? Getting used to his set point. And that is where that adjustment from going from the left to the right side can be seen. I talked about it in my videos in the preseason. Villanueva struggled mightily in his first game with his set point. He was once again setting too shallow. Now, here's the ironic part. It looked fixed to me in games 2 and 3, and I have the video clips to show where he's setting deeper, where he's getting square with the guy. So I don't know if this was Max Crosby and these other speed rushers are just too fast. I don't know if it's, having a break. It doesn't really matter. It's the set point is off. He's not getting deep enough in his vertical set. He's setting on the inside shoulder, and guys are just dipping because he's too tall to overcome those leverage issues. So, that's the reason why. That's what they're going to sit and talk about in the film room. It's not going to be like, Villanueva sucks, we need to cut him. No, they're going to break it down and look at why. And that is the why. So that's what he needs to fix. Ronnie Stanley, a lot of it, he just looked physically not there. He didn't look his crisp self. He wasn't getting square with the edge rushers. He wasn't able to drop his anchor. He was playing too high. Some of that's conditioning. Some of that's play strength. Some of that's just stuff that's going to come. We've seen him do enough good things in the past. I'm not sure this injury was enough to say he's lost a step. That seems a little crazy. So I think it's unfortunate because we have the Chiefs this week, but these guys need a few weeks to kind of get it right before I'm ready to move on from. We're never going to move on from Stanley pending health, but I need a couple weeks from Villanueva to see if he can right the ship.
Yeah, and I agree, Cole. There are a bunch of factors that go into this. It's not just this guy played bad or this guy played good. There are a couple things that go into it, and obviously, the breakdowns on 2 guys watching football. Go and check them out, because if you want more in-depth analysis like Cole just gave us right there, go check out that work. But Cole, the offense was not the only storyline here. The defense also had a couple of successes and also some struggles. So we'll get into that after we get back from our first break. So stay tuned for that. But we're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back to start another football season. As always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. With the new updated site and interface, even more odds, props, and contests, BetOnline AG continues to be the number one source for everything football. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 100% welcome bonus. That's double your initial deposit just for signing up. Don't forget to use promo code NFL100. From football, basketball, boxing, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. And we return here with our second segment of this Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still talking here with Cole Jackson. And Cole, I talked about it a bit there as we went into our first break, but the defense definitely had an up and down performance. We'll talk about the play calling here in the final segment, but there was just a lot in terms of pass rush that I was pretty, I guess, disappointed with, to be honest, because Baltimore's pass rush going up against that Raiders offensive line that was very, very inexperienced. It just seemed like the team should have been able to do more in that regard. So looking through the mailbag here, and we do have a bunch of questions about the pass rush. And our first question here about the pass rush comes from Perk Michaels, who asks, do we actually have any type of pass rush, or did we just not look decent tonight? And so, Cole, this pass rush was, I don't even know. I guess I'd call it decent because the Ravens, they did get pressure in some certain circumstances, and other certain circumstances, especially late in the game, fourth quarter, overtime, there just was no pass rush, very little. It was cover zero, cover zero, cover zero, and they weren't getting home even when they were blitzing. It caused a lot of one-on-ones. So what did you think overall the Ravens pass rush, Cole? I know Justin Houston made a nice play. Adafe Owe looked very strong. What are you looking for out of this pass rush in the coming weeks, and what did you see out of them in this first week here against the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting comparison because you can see where the Raiders had a pass rush. And when you look at the Raiders pass rush, they did it without blitzing. And it was just guys winning one-on-one matchups. If it wasn't Ngakwe winning one, it was Crosby winning one. If it wasn't them, it was Nassib winning one. And it's really it's kind of the problem with the pass rush is you need guys to be able to win one-on-one. Like it's not, I know that sounds simplistic, but it's just the honest to God truth. It's, outside of Houston, having the double hand swipe on Leatherwood, was there anyone that like truly feasted on a one-on-one? There's a couple, not really. And that's kind of the problem. And so I know I've seen a lot of talk about, we should have went into the 4-man rush because we need to get guys into a rhythm. I mean, if it's a 4-man rush or it's a blitz, it's still a one-on-one rush. What those blitzes do is they create more one-on-one rushes, or they create a free rusher. And so that's really what the purpose of the blitz is. And like I said, Josh Jacobs was fantastic picking up the blitz. Kenyon Drake had a couple of good reps. They had their tight end staying in. I forget his name, but the second tight end staying in on some of the 6-man protections they were showing. And they just adjusted well. But that isn't like an excuse because those are still one-on-one rushes. We just don't have guys that are going to win one-on-one consistently right now. And so, does that mean it's impossible? No, I think it's similar to the offensive line. Guys got to execute. I know Calais Campbell can do it. I know Matabike can do it. I know Houston can do it. I think Owe can do it. It's just, when is it going to all get put together? When are you going to have multiple guys winning battles? That's where their pass rush is going to come from. So I'm not in agreement that, necessarily not blitzing was the problem. I think it was, 4-man rush, 5-man rush, 6-man rush against 5-6-man protection. Guys have to win one-on-one no matter what the matchup is. We can't rely on creating free rushers or having that delayed blitz from Queen, that sort of stuff. That's not how you're going to consistently win in this league. So the reality is, I'm not sure anything schematically is going to fix this problem. It's guys have to execute their assignments and win in one-on-ones. And I know it sounds simplistic, but it's just the honest to God truth.
Yeah, and I know this question, Cole, it's been put out there for years because the Ravens, they have not been able to consistently generate pressure, whether it be with 4 guys or 5 guys. When they start blitzing, they can do some stuff, but I know against the Raiders, they just weren't getting pressure even when they were blitzing. But there have been the questions, is it the players? Is it the scheme? Why can't the Ravens consistently generate pressure year in and year out for these past couple seasons when they're not sending 6, 7, 8 guys? And I think this was a big storyline for me, a big question coming into the year, which was, could the Ravens do that? And so far, the answer is no. But again, like you said, I don't think this is a problem that can never be fixed ever. But Cole, moving on, there is a question relating to the pass rush a bit, but also taking a bit of a different angle. And it comes from DH103, who asks, why was Justin Houston dropping in coverage and he's our best pass rusher? Now, Cole, the Ravens, Their defense, very, very big on positional versatility. Now, Justin Houston, I know, did not drop back into coverage a ton in this game. On one of the plays he did, though, he was in a zone and Hunter Renfrow, he was assigned, came across there and made a catch. Houston was, not really near him. Houston doesn't make the tackle. Renfrow runs up the sideline. Marlon Humphrey does. It's that huge play. But Justin Houston, a lot of people are asking, why don't you put Tyus Bowser in that situation? Or why don't you put Odafe Owe in that situation? So, Cole, I will pose it again for you. Why was Justin Houston dropping back into coverage?
All right, so we're gonna get this out of the way because I had to tweet about it earlier. Justin Houston played 56 snaps, 14 run defense, 40 pass rush. Guess how many he played in coverage? 2. He played 2. That adds up to 3.6% of all snaps he played in coverage. This is one of those examples of you take one play and extrapolate it as if it was a common theme. I saw it a couple of times today. It's Houston couldn't get in a rhythm because he was too busy dropping in coverage. Come on. He's played 7,000 snaps in his career. 1,000 of those have been dropping in coverage. It accounts for 13% of all of his career snaps were dropping into coverage. And in this game, it was 3%. It's just he wasn't in coverage that much. And that's the thing about the Renfrow play. He had him at the sideline and he just didn't make the tackle. So, I mean, how different is this conversation if Renfrew is pushed out of bounds for 5 yards? So, should he be dropping into coverage? If it's 2 to 5 times a game, I'm not going to have much of a qualm with it. Even Owe only dropped 7 times on his 48 snaps. That was 13%. To compare to Bowser dropped on 45% of his plays in this game. So, I'm not concerned about Houston dropping into coverage. He just didn't do it that much. I think we're looking at one play where a big gain was given up and saying, this was a theme in the game, and but it wasn't. Like, it just, the data isn't there to support that. And when he does drop in coverage, and like I said, 13% of his career snaps have been coverage drops. He knows what he has to do in coverage. And to be fair, because you can easily look this up, he drops way less now than he did early in his career. He's not the same player. He's a pass rusher now. I get it. But, he's a vet. And, it's the same as seeing Campbell move from, a 6 tech into a 0 tech. Guys are going to move around. They're going to do versatile things. They still have to execute their assignment. So, I'm not going to get up into a big frenzy about 2 coverage drops. I don't think it had a major impact on the game. I don't think it prevented him from getting in a rhythm. And, when he does drop, he needs to make those tackles. That's just part of the game.
Yeah, it is. And look, would you rather have a guy like Tyus Bowser in that situation or Odafe Owe? Sure. But, the Ravens aren't planning. They don't know what the Raiders are going to do on offense every single play, right? They didn't know what was going to happen on that play. They tried to, but not every play you could know that. So, yes, Houston, probably not the best man for that assignment in there, but it happens. And it's not like, as you mentioned, Cole, he was asked to do it for 70% of his snaps. He wasn't dropping back into coverage in that role. That's not what his assignment is anyway. But it just seems like, and I'll even go back to week 1 last season, where first defensive drive for the Ravens had Calais Campbell driving back into coverage. So it's not like they're going out there and just saying, hey, you are an outside linebacker, you are rushing the passer, or hey, you are a cornerback, you are covering, right?
And with Campbell, he had a couple of PBUs and everyone was happy because, that was what his role was. So, again, if he pushes Renfrow out of bounds, how much are we even talking about this? It's just, I just can't use one play to create a frenzy. I just can't.
Yeah, and it's not ideal, but again, it is just one play. So it was unfortunate that the big gain happened, that Renfrow wasn't pushed out of bounds, but Houston is probably getting, as you mentioned, Cole, I'm assuming probably 2 to 5 pass coverage snaps a game, and then the rest he's being used in the role that I think he is best at, which is obviously rushing the passer and even stopping the run a bit, which Houston was brought in for a reason, and I think he'll do a pretty good job this season. But we are going to be talking about the coordinators next in Greg Roman and Don Martindale, as there were a plethora of questions about those two, so stay tuned for that. And we will be right back. But Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friend's login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more at directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. And Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar ever. Did you know that Built Bar has 9 delicious flavors, including coconut, cherry, raspberry, mint brownie, and salted caramel? Not only are Built Bar flavors the best tasting, but they're healthy too. Order today and get that raspberry or mint brownie or whatever you like. Go to Built.com and use promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off of your order. Use promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. And we return here with our final segment of this Mailbag edition, Wednesday edition of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher is still here with Cole Jackson. And Cole, the coordinators in this one got a lot of heat for some of their decisions. Don Martindale, and uncharacteristically, not uncharacteristic in the fact that he blitzed a lot, but it just was not working and he continued to go to it. That's what his play style is. Greg Roman, we saw a couple of questionable play calling decisions there as well. So let's start off with the offense and talk about Greg Roman. Now, there have been a lot of calls about Greg Roman. Charm City Raven asked, will we ever fire Greg Roman? I think that comes back to a bunch of, should he have been fired last year? Should he have been fired this time? All that different stuff. But Cole, it just seems like overall, out of the questions we got here, Greg Roman's name brought up a couple of times, and it's all about when would Greg Roman get fired. And so I'll kind of say, Cole, if the Ravens do start off 0-3 or 1-3, 1-4, do you think that Greg Roman would be the most likely choice here to kind of be scapegoated for, whether it's the motivation of the team or just to send a message?
I definitely, it's interesting when they brought in Martin and Williams, a lot of people kind of had that speculation, they were more passing game oriented, looking at Martin. He was wide receiver coach. He was also USC's OC. He was USC's passing game coordinator. He was passing game coordinator at the University of Kentucky, going all the way back to when he was a passing game coordinator at the high school ranks back in the mid 2000s. So, that's always been his kind of bread and butter. He gets brought in to coach the receivers. Williams, who has been more of, which is kind of ironic given the titles, but he was brought in as the pass game specialist, and he's been a personal wide receiver coach to, guys like Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. So, it was one of those things where, if they did go that route and they elevate Martin to offensive coordinator, Williams is there to kind of step in with the wide receivers, who he does work with every day anyway. So, I know people noticed that. It wasn't that it was necessarily a shock. Will they fire Greg Roman? I mean, I don't really find Harbaugh's ever been too knee-jerky. We called for Cam Cameron. Am I saying, is that there? Yeah, Cam Cameron to be fired for like a year. We've called for Mark Trestman to be fired for like a year. And I know people have been calling for Roman to be fired, but, as much as it has been the Lamar Jackson show, and we know Lamar, what the impact he has on the offense, he's an MVP caliber guy. I think it might just be the reality that a guy like Lamar Jackson is going to keep Greg Roman in business because he gets results, and sometimes the results are hard to argue with. But you look at a game like yesterday. I was pretty critical of the play calling. I thought that second, fourth down call where they were lined up in pistol and gave it to Murray on a straight up the middle run where they have no speed. I thought that was a huge mistake. They didn't even use Lamar and his legs there with like an option concept. And then there's some other things like, it didn't seem like they could get into a rhythm with the run game because they didn't, they clearly aren't comfortable using the read option concepts. I'm assuming because they're worried about the lack of communication between Lamar and his new stable of running backs, at the mesh point, that just comes with chemistry and timing. We saw it in 2018 when Lamar took this offense over. There were a bunch of fumbles between Lamar and Gus Edwards. And that was, a lot of people freaked out. Like, why is Lamar fumbling? You just have to, those mesh point communication cues, they're tough. They come with time. So I do think that's going to come back, but then it's like, okay, well, like, let's line up under center, let's run inside zone, and let's run it down their throat. Our offensive tackles can't pass protect. Why are we trying to go play action? And they're just charging the mesh point anyway out of play action. So, I found he couldn't get into a rhythm. And they did struggle to get the ball going in the run game, but they also didn't seem too keen on sticking to a concept. They were mixing up counter into power into, they had a guard tackle pull on a power concept, and they had a little bit of zone, and they had that outside zone run to Cannon that came back. So it was kind of a whole mishmash of concepts where it's like, okay, we're struggling to pass protect. Let's just line up under center. Let's run inside zone at them. Let's run power at them. Let's just play power football. You go back to that 2019 game against the New England Patriots. What impressed me so much, it wasn't necessarily the offense executed to a T, but Roman just went out there and just pounded the rock at them. It was just nonstop power football. And, that was the identity that I thought this team was building. And that's where I think Roman is struggling. What is your identity? And you need to if your team is struggling in a certain way, get into your identity, go out there and smash them. Like, get the 12 personnel going and start running the ball down their throat.
Yeah, and the Ravens as a team on Monday night averaged 5.6 yards per carry. So it's not like at the end of the day the run game wasn't playing well and they were averaging like 3 yards a carry. No, they played well, but the Ravens throw the ball 30 times, they run it 34, they lose the time of possession battle by around 2 minutes. Whereas we've seen with the Ravens, they are more successful when they can get up like they did 14-0 early and then run kind of ball control offense where they're shaving 8, 9, 10, 11 minutes off the clock every possession. But it just seemed like to me the Ravens were, and this goes back to what we saw a bit during the middle of 2020, forcing the ball to be thrown. It seems like they're trying to prove that point again, which is, hey, we can run it, but we're going to throw it to and be successful, when sometimes it's okay to get the yards and score the points any way you can get them, whether it's, look, if the Ravens can score 40 points running the football 50 times and passing it no times, or score 5 throwing it 30 times and running it 30 times, I'm taking the 40 regardless of how many times they throw the ball. So I think that the Ravens, they just have to get back to what they are known to do really well, which is the run game, which they average 5.6 yards per carry on Monday. But finally here at Cole, let's talk a bit about Don Martindale. Don Martindale is somebody who has turned himself into one of the best defensive coordinators in the NFL. His very high blitz percentage has definitely been a key calling card for him. But High asks, what's the philosophy blitzing on almost every third down, putting so much pressure on your corners over and over? And I think obviously what High is referring to here is probably mostly in the fourth quarter and overtime, even a bit earlier than that too, where the Ravens were repeatedly blitzing, sending cover zero, leaving those corners in one-on-one matchups, not having any help sometimes behind them. And they weren't getting home with pressure. So it leaves those corners in a bind because at the NFL level, nobody can cover for 4, 5, 6, 7 seconds. And when they're blitzing and they're not getting pressure, it just leaves a lot to be open in, especially deep, if there's not a guy back there helping. If they're sending 8 guys and there are 4 one-on-one matchups or 3 one-on-one matchups, there's probably going to be completions on most of those possessions and most of those plays, which we did see. So, Cole, what's your philosophy, or what's your stance on the philosophy of Don Martindale blitzing on almost every single play, and despite still not getting pressure on a lot of those plays, continuing to go back to it and leaving those cornerbacks really on an island sometimes?
So it's ironic, right? Because I'm criticizing Greg Roman for not sticking to his identity. So how can I turn around and criticize Wink Martindale for sticking to his identity? And I mean, I think it was Kyle Andrews tweeted out last night, or maybe it was Dan Ofuze, who former Baltimore Sun writer, who's now down covering the Dolphins. You live by the blitz, you die by the blitz. And that is how Wink Martindale coaches football. yeah, I tweeted it when Marcus Peters went down. It wasn't that the Ravens didn't have depth at corner. They do. They did. They still do. They're gonna add a guy now, but they still have depth. It's the fact that the way Wink calls his defense, and to be fair, this is paired really well with the front office approach to building this defense. They've invested heavy dollars into the secondary. Tavon Young's been paid. Marlon Humphrey's been paid. Marcus Peters was paid. Jimmy Smith is still around. Though that's heavy corner depth. But when you're missing both Peters and Jimmy Smith, your defense is built on stressing the corners where you're putting all that money into the defense. Because you're paying for top players there. And to be fair, the Ravens have that. When everyone's healthy, that top four is top three in the league. So that makes Wink comfortable to do it. So this is where we get into what's your identity and how are you going to adjust. So on one hand, Wink stuck to his identity. It's not that shocking, in my opinion. Should he have adjusted based on the context that you don't have your guys? Well, I mean, when we did send 4, there wasn't much pressure outside of Justin Houston having a double swipe on Leatherwood and McPhee cleaning up the sack. So, it's hard to say that, because if they send 4 and Carr just stands there in the pocket, yes, you didn't send the house and you may have protected down deep, but someone's just going to shake open and they're going to get that completion. How many times have we seen that? We saw it against the Chiefs nonstop because they were sending 4 a lot. And, Mahomes would just, dance back there. There'd be a little bit of pressure. He'd take a step and then, oh, look, Tyreek Hill broke away because no one can run with a 4-3 guy for that long. Shocker. So, it really comes down to what's your identity and how much are you going to adjust. I can't fault Wink for sticking to his identity. I do think on the final touchdown when Zay Jones scored, they were in field goal range. I think he was like, let's go out there and try and force another mistake at the ball back, because they were probably expecting Carlson, who had a clean night in a dome arena, to probably hit that field goal if it's an incomplete. And, that was just Humphrey. If Humphrey doesn't run into Westry, I think it was Westry. Apologies if it wasn't Westry. If he doesn't run into him, is that play made? What happens? Do they miss that field goal? You know what I mean? Like a lot of people were focusing on the cover 0 there. I think he went to send the house on that specific play. But I mean, guys were getting open downfield. There was a lack of execution. I just can't fault Wink for sticking to his identity. I'd feel like a hypocrite. So, I'm more on Team Wink here. I think that's just the way he's going to call games, because that's where he's had success in this league.
Right. And look, I understand that it is frustrating to see the Ravens continually send those blitzes and continuously not get pressure. And the Ravens, they haven't had a lot of time to kind of deal with this Marcus Peters injury and figure out how can they call a game that better suits a defense that does not have a player like Marcus Peters in it. It's going to change what they do a little bit. But one thing that I don't think is going to change throughout the whole year, as long as Don Martindale is the defensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens, is the aggressive blitzing style. So yes, in some situations, should the Ravens maybe have dropped back 1 or 2 more players? Maybe, right? Sometimes. But at the same time, I agree where you're not all of a sudden going to get a Don Martindale who never blitzes. And, the adjustments, yes, both Roman and Martindale could have adjusted a tiny bit better. But I think that both will have to be at the top of their games. I think Martindale obviously is a lot safer at this point than Greg Roman. So, Cole, we'll see how those two end up bouncing back, I guess, against the Kansas City Chiefs. But that's all I have for you here today. I apologize if we weren't able to get to your mailbag question. I think this is the most mailbag questions we've ever gotten. So I'll try to get to some of them on Friday's episode if I can. If not, though, I do apologize, Cole. It was a blast having you on. Where can people find your work?
Come on over to Two Guys Watching Football. We're going to be doing an in-depth look at Alejandro Villanueva as soon as the All-22 drops. So, again, I don't think it's constructive to try and, we know what happened. It is what it is. Let's go find out why. And that's what we're going to show you over there. So, a couple other streams of content. Adam and I dropped a post game that we recorded last night at 12:30. So, we're a little dreary eyed, but, a lot of fun things going on over there. So over at the Two Guys Watching Football YouTube channel and on Twitter at Cole Jackson FB.
Very good. And I don't even want to tell everybody when I went to bed last night. It was a late night, and it stung a little bit more because it was a loss. But regardless, getting out all the content is great. Go look at Cole's work both on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever he has stuff, because as you saw here for these past 40 minutes, he does provide great analysis. But that's all that I have for you today here on Locked On Ravens. When we get back here tomorrow, we'll be doing a crossover Thursday, the 2nd of 2021, this time with Locked On Chiefs. So stay tuned for that, and I will see you tomorrow.